Dad said it the way you'd say something obvious, like he was correcting a math error. Interior design isn't a career, Simone. It's a hobby for people who can't commit to something real. I was 22. I had just told my parents I was leaving architecture school at the University of Waterloo to pursue design on my own. Not interior decorating, real spatial design. Residential and commercial. The kind that wins awards and reshapes how people live inside the spaces they call home. My dad is a cardiac surgeon. My mom is a family physician. My older brother just finished his residency in Vancouver. In our house, the conversation at dinner was either about medicine or about why you weren't in medicine. There was no third option. I had known for 2 years that architecture school wasn't it for me. The program was fine. The program was fine. The professors were brilliant. But every time I sat down to work on a structural assignment, my mind drifted, not toward the bones of a building, but toward what went inside it. The light. The materials. The way a room could make someone feel safe or anxious or alive before they even registered why. My elective in design history was the only class where I forgot to check the time. I tried to explain this to my parents the night I came home to Mississauga for Thanksgiving. I had rehearsed it on the GO train the entire way. I had a plan. I had savings. I had already been taking freelance commissions on the side, small things, a condo refresh for a classmate's aunt, a home office for a professor, and I had made just over $9,000 in 8 months doing it part-time. I thought that would mean something. My dad set down his fork. He looked at me the way he looks at a patient who has refused treatment, not angry. Worse, disappointed in the quality of my judgment. You're going to walk away from an architecture degree, he said, for throw pillows and paint swatches. My mom didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she said, Simone, we didn't work this hard for you to waste your potential on something decorative. Decorative? She said it like a diagnosis. My brother changed the subject to his rotation schedule. Nobody asked me anything else about it. After dinner, my dad found me in the kitchen and said quietly, so my mom wouldn't hear, as if the quietness made it gentler. If you leave that program, you're on your own. We won't be subsidizing a fantasy. I drove back to Waterloo that night instead of staying over. I sat in my apartment with my sketchbook spread across the floor and I made a decision. Not out of spite, out of clarity. I had been waiting for permission that was never going to come, and the waiting was costing me more than the leaving ever would. I withdrew from the program the following Monday. I want to be honest about what came next, because it's easy to tell this story like it was a straight line upward, and it was not. The first year was genuinely hard in a way that I didn't let anyone see. I moved to Toronto. I found a 1-bedroom in Leslieville that cost me $1,500 a month and smelled like the previous tenant's dog for the first 3 weeks. I worked at a furniture showroom on King Street 4 days a week and did freelance projects on the other 3. My savings ran down fast. There were months where I chose between groceries and the software subscription and picked the software because the software was how I'd eventually afford groceries again. My parents didn't call much. When they did, the calls were polite and short, the kind of calls you have with someone you used to know. My mom would ask about the weather in Toronto. My dad would mention my brother's latest milestone. Nobody asked about my work. What they didn't know was that I was building something. I had started documenting every project on a blog, not the finished product, the process, the decisions. Why I chose a specific material. Why I blew the budget on the right light fixture and cut it on the wrong one. Why a client cried when she walked into a redesigned kitchen and said it finally felt like hers. I wrote about it plainly. No filters, no aspirational language, just what it actually looked like to make design decisions under real constraints with real people. The blog found an audience slowly and then all at once. Interior designers shared it. Then architects. Then a journalist at Azure magazine reached out asking if I'd be willing to be profiled for a piece on young independent designers disrupting the traditional residential market. I said yes before she finished the sentence. The piece ran in the spring of my 3rd year in Toronto. Within 6 weeks, I had more inquiries than I could take on alone. I brought in a second designer, then a third. We incorporated. I named the studio Foundry Studio Co. because the work felt like that, raw material being shaped under heat into something that holds. By the end of that year, we had completed 14 residential projects across Toronto, 2 in Ottawa, and 1 spectacular full-gut renovation of a heritage property in the annex that got us shortlisted for a Canadian Interiors Award. The shortlisting led to a feature. The feature led to a commercial client. The commercial client led to a contract I still have trouble saying out loud. A mid-sized hospitality group out of Calgary wanted us to lead the interior concept for a new boutique hotel they were developing on the Bow River. 42 rooms, full common areas, restaurant, bar, spa, rooftop terrace. They had looked at 7 firms. They chose us. The contract value, including phased deliverables and licensing of our design concepts, was just over $2.8 million. I signed the paperwork in a boardroom on Bay Street and took the elevator down alone and stood on the sidewalk in February, and the cold hit me and I started laughing. Not because it was funny, because it was real. I paid off my student line of credit that afternoon. I bought myself dinner at a restaurant I'd walked past for 3 years and told myself one day. I did not call my parents. That probably sounds cold. I thought about it a lot. But here's the thing. They had made their position clear, and I had made mine. I wasn't waiting for validation anymore. The absence of their belief in me had stopped being a wound and had become something quieter. A fact. A room I no longer needed to furnish. The hotel project took 14 months and won us a full award. The Canadian Interior's Best Commercial Project. The night of the ceremony, I was in a dress I had owned for 6 years and I accepted the award, and in my speech I thanked my team and my first clients and the woman at the furniture showroom who had let me rearrange the floor displays on slow Tuesdays just to see what happened. I didn't thank my family. It didn't occur to me until a colleague asked afterward, and I had to think about why. The answer was simple. They had not been part of the making of it. The hotel opened to reviews that mentioned our work specifically. One travel writer called the lobby the kind of space that makes you feel like the best version of the city you came from. I printed that one out. It's still on the wall. We grew. By the time I was 28, we had a team of 9 and a studio space in a converted warehouse on Dundas East. We had completed projects in every major Canadian city and 2 in the States. The Calgary clients referred us to their network and their network referred us further. We had a wait list. I bought a house in the east end of Toronto, a Victorian semi that had been split into rental units and neglected for 15 years. I bought it because it was the kind of project I loved most, something that had good bones and had been treated as an afterthought. I spent 8 months on the renovation, doing much of the sourcing and detail work myself. 4 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, a back garden, a studio on the top floor where I could sketch by the window with good morning light. I didn't tell my parents I had bought it. I didn't tell them much by that point. The news got to them eventually, I think through my aunt who follows me on Instagram. My mom called on a Wednesday evening. I was eating leftovers at my kitchen island. I almost didn't answer. She asked how I was. I said fine. She said she'd heard things were going well with my work. I said yes, going well. There was a pause. Then she said she and my dad had been talking and they felt they hadn't handled things well when I left school and they wanted to reconnect. Reconnect. I sat with that word for a few seconds. It's interesting, the language people choose when they want something. Reconnect sounds bilateral, like 2 people reaching toward each other from equal distance. But we weren't equally distant. I had been living my life without them for 6 years. They had been watching from the outside, and now that the outside looked good, they wanted back in. I asked my mom what she meant by reconnecting. She said she'd like to see me. That my dad would too. That it had been too long. I said, it has been a long time. A lot has happened. She said she knew and she was proud of me. I want to tell you that the word proud felt like something. It did, a little. Something small and old, like finding a photograph you'd forgotten. But it didn't change the arithmetic. Pride after the fact is not the same as belief at the beginning. I knew the difference now, the way you know the difference between a load-bearing wall and a decorative one. One of them holds the structure up, the other is just there to look like something. I told her I'd think about it. I didn't say yes, I didn't say no. A few weeks later, my aunt called. She was warmer, more direct. She said my parents were struggling. My dad had taken early retirement due to some health concerns I hadn't known about. My mom's clinic had gone through a complicated partnership dissolution, and she had taken a significant financial hit. They had sold the Mississauga house and were renting something smaller in Hamilton. She said they could use some help. She didn't say it crassly. She genuinely loves my parents, but the shape of the core was clear. I thought about the night my dad said he wouldn't subsidize a fantasy. I thought about every call where my mom asked about the weather instead of my work. I thought about Thanksgiving when I was 22, and the fog going down, and the silence from my brother, and the drive back to Waterloo alone in the dark. I'm not a cruel person. I want to be clear about that. What I am is someone who spent 6 years learning exactly what it costs to build something real without anyone handing you the materials. I know what it is to be alone in a rented room choosing between groceries and software. I know what it costs to believe in yourself when the people who are supposed to believe in you have already voted no. I called my mom back the following Sunday. I told her I was sorry to hear about my dad's health, and I meant that honestly. I told her I was glad she reached out, and then I said something I had thought about carefully. I said, I love you both, but I can't be what you need me to be right now. I spent a long time building a life without a safety net, and I can't be someone else's safety net now, especially not for people who told me I was making a mistake when I started. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said she understood. I don't know if she did, but she didn't argue, and that was something. I have thought about whether I made the right call. I think about it more than I let on. I don't think love is something you switch off. I love my parents. I also know that love is not the same as access, and it's not the same as forgetting. I can hold both things at once. I've gotten good at that. What I've done instead of writing a check is something that I think they'd understand if they let themselves. 2 years ago, I partnered with a community organization in Scarborough to offer free design consultations to low income families who were trying to make rental spaces feel livable and safe. We've worked with over 60 families. We help people build shelves. We source furniture from Habitat for Humanity restores. We show people how a coat of paint and the right light can change how a room feels when you come home tired. We call it Foundly Foundations. I started it because of a conversation I had once with a client, a woman in her 70s who had moved into a small apartment after her husband died and felt like she was disappearing inside it. After we finished, she told me, "You gave me my home back." I've never forgotten that. That's the thing about design that my dad couldn't see when he called it decorative. The spaces we live in are not neutral, they shape us. A room that feels like a container can shrink you. A room that feels like a place can hold you. That's not a hobby. That's not a hobby. That's not throw pillows. That's the difference between surviving a space and belonging to it. My studio on Dundas East has good light in the mornings. I still sketch by the window. My team is 12 people now, and we're in the middle of a project I'm more excited about than anything we've done. A co-housing development in Hamilton, actually, not far from where my parents are renting. Designed around shared outdoor space and flexible floor plans for multi-generational living. I don't know if they'll walk past it one day. I hope someone makes them feel at home in it. I finished the paperwork on our latest contract last month. I went home and made dinner in my kitchen with its salvaged butcher block counters and the windows I left as a pair, even though every contractor told me to replace them because the wavy glass throws light across the floor in a way I have never been able to replicate. And some things are worth keeping exactly as they are. I've thought a lot about what actually changed my life, and I don't think it was the contract. I think it was the Tuesday night I chose the software subscription over groceries and didn't tell anyone. Nobody sees those moments. They don't make it into the version of the story people share. But that's where everything actually happens, in the small private decisions you make when there's no audience and no reward yet, and you do it anyway because the work matters to you more than the comfort of being understood. My dad is a good man. I want to be clear about that too. He spent decades making difficult decisions under pressure to give our family a stable life. What he couldn't see, what I couldn't make him see, was that his definition of stability was built on a foundation I didn't share. He thought he was protecting me. He was, in his own way. He just didn't know that the thing he was protecting me from was the only thing I actually wanted to build. There's a version of this story where I resent him for it. I don't. Not really. What I've come to understand is that when people tell you something can't be done, they're usually describing the edges of their own imagination, not yours. My dad couldn't picture a life built around spatial design because nothing in his experience had shown him that was possible. That's not cruelty. That's the limit of what any of us can see from where we're standing. What I had to develop, and it took years, genuinely, was the ability to act on my own judgment even when everyone I trusted had voted the other way. That's not stubbornness. It's something quieter and harder to name. It's knowing the difference between doubt that should stop you and doubt that's just part of the process. I got that wrong plenty of times. I second guessed myself constantly in that first year in Leslieville. But I kept coming back to the work, and the work kept showing me what I needed to know next. The other thing I've learned is that integrity isn't a dramatic gesture. It's not the moment you sign the contract or accept the award. It's whether you do the work honestly when nobody's watching. Whether you tell a client the truth when the truth costs you something. Whether you build a thing the right way even when the wrong way would be faster. I've tried to hold to that. Not perfectly, but consistently enough that the work has a shape I recognize as mine. And the part nobody talks about, the part I think about most, is what you do with it once you have it. The contract, the studio, the house with the wavy glass windows. It would be easy to let that become the whole story. But I keep coming back to the woman in her 70s who said I gave her her home back. That's the thing I want to keep earning. Not the number on the contract, the feeling that the work actually reached someone. My parents are in Hamilton now. The world is smaller than anyone plans for. I don't know what the next chapter looks like for us, but I know what it looks like for me, and that feels like enough.